evening and welcome to LMR Live, coming to you from Nutt Auditorium at the University of Mississippi. We bring you what? We bring you what? Edutainment. It was just a week ago that we kicked off our 10th season with the Assembly Quartet, Saxophone Quartet. We're back again this week for episode number 41. So exciting. LMR, what do we do? We deal with blues, chamber music, contemporary music, folk, jazz, musical theater, opera, symphonic, punk, art song. I could go on. Our programming features very varied genres, creates new art, brings acclaimed artists to Oxford, gives students the opportunity to work and perform with them, and we make these events available to the public in person in Nutt Auditorium, on location, say in Nashville or New York City, and via the web. We are so glad you're here with us tonight. So what are we doing tonight? What are we doing? We're going to focus on the voice. Not just singing, though, the voice in general. Whether you are an elementary school teacher, a senior citizen, a professional singer, or an attorney, we're going to give you some helpful tips tonight about how you can address your vocal life as a vocal athlete. Thus the book. But who are we going to do this with? We are going to do this with Marci Rosenberg. But before I tell you a little bit about her, I want to give a big thank you to two people, to Jennifer Robinson, lecturer in music, and to Dr. Bradley Robinson, professor of music at the University of Mississippi, for making this residency with Marcy a reality and bringing her to campus. Let's give those two a round of applause. So, who is Marci Rosenberg? Let's talk about it. She's a singer. She's a speech pathologist and a clinical voice specialist. She has practiced for almost 20 years at the University of Michigan Vocal Health Center, specializing in rehabilitation of injured voices. She is a vocal health consultant to the musical theater department. She is co-author of The Vocal Athlete, which is about to have a new edition coming out in 2024. We'll talk more about that. I could talk for days about her, but you don't want to just hear me talk. You could visit her website. Let's meet her, Marci Rosenberg. Welcome. Have a seat. So I've known about you for a long time, admired your work, and having you here has just been such a gift. Full confession, I have not attended every session. I'm putting it out there. I wish I could. My day job kept calling me. But it was just so great to experience you in person. So thank you for making time for the University of Mississippi.
Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys. It has been great, and to my hostesses, thank you for having me. It's really been a special 2 days.
Yay. So let's start at the beginning. Marci, as a singer, what led you to singing?
Well, my parents would tell you I was born singing. I was singing before I was speaking. So I was just one of those kids that was always putting on shows in my backyard and charging my family members admission. I think you probably all know that scenario.
Yes.
I did a lot of like kids community theater when I was younger. And then I actually did professional theater as a child. So I did quite a bit of regional musical theater productions as a child, and I can tell you that I actually got sacked from a production of The Sound of Music when I was playing Gretel. I think I was 6, and I got canned because I was upstaging the lead. So that was how my professional career started. And so I did a lot of that type of stuff as a kid, and then ended up going to Interlochen Arts Academy boarding school where I graduated, and then went on to Peabody Conservatory to study classical voice. And in my senior year, I was in the pedagogy class taught by Stanley Cornett, and he took us on a field trip to a clinic similar to the clinic that I now work in. And I met a speech pathologist, and I started to understand that there was an entire field a voice and vocology that was, that existed, that I didn't know anything about. And so I, probably within a month of that field trip where I saw a scope for the first time and met a laryngologist, I was enrolled, so I graduated with my undergrad in voice performance and then went right into a second bachelor's degree in speech language pathology, and then went on and did some research at the National Institutes of Health and then graduate school for speech pathology. So I sort of switched that trajectory because my voice teacher, Ruth Drucker, always used to call me a closet doctor because I would come into my voice lessons with very physiologically based questions, and I wanted very detailed answers, and I wasn't satisfied with sort of like the imagery and just being told to smell a rose. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know what was happening, you know. So anyway, so that's the long story of how I ended up at Michigan Medicine, where I've been for 20 years. They hired me out of grad school, and
amazing.
I've never left.
That's amazing. So I just want to point a couple of things out to our students. I think what I take from this is the fact that in your undergrad studies, vocal performance, but that one little moment then took you a completely different direction, which has really defined your professional career. So take advantage of those opportunities that might be different from the, I don't know, predicted path.
Yep.
The other thing you and I were talking about earlier this week, which was just yesterday, the fact of so many undergrads aren't aware of overuse.
Yeah.
Do you think it was definitely a problem when I was an undergrad? I mean, it wasn't talked about. It was just work, 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 do. Do you think it's still an issue? How do we address that?
I do think it's still an issue, but I would say now with the technology and with internet and online learning, I think there's a lot more continuing ed that is available to students that did not exist when we were in school and doing our training. So I think we're in a better place than we were regarding information about vocal health than when you and I were in school. But it is still an issue, and I think it's probably school specific. So at University of Michigan, there's an enormous emphasis on vocal health because we have the clinic that's right across the street.
They have
from
you.
the School of Music. They have me. They have world-class laryngologists. So, you know, it's a unique situation. I was just texting several hours ago with one of the MTs who has had a really bad cold, and she has an audition coming up, and what should I do? You know, so they have access. But, you know, a lot of people don't have that. And so then where do you get that information? And it's the voice teachers that they're looking at, and the voice teacher is the gatekeeper for the vocal health. And so if the voice, it's really, in my opinion, it's actually the pedagogy programs and the voice teachers that really need to have that information.
And that influence on the culture of
Absolutely.
how to manage that, how to budget
Yes.
the voice. You bring up a good point. I mean, where we're located, we do have otolaryngologists, and you can find speech folks, but it's sometimes hard to find someone who truly understands the performer, the singer.
Right. So you don't. So an otolaryngologist is a very general term. So you want, those of you who are singers want a laryngologist, which is an otolaryngologist. That's the general umbrella, and the laryngologist is the larynx specialist. And almost all fellowship-trained laryngologists will be singer savvy, and most of them will have a speech pathologist similar to me.
Got it. So that voice teacher working with students who are going to be future educators. Another thing that I think is an issue when we think of culture is there's a lot of pressure on high school, I'll be specific, choral and music teachers or theater teachers to just do those concerts, do those productions. And I've noticed, not being specific to any geographical region, but I've noticed a tendency that you push through. You sing through no matter what. And to me, it translates as the individual is expendable, which they would never do in sports. I don't think, well, I shouldn't say that. it has happened.
I think
But,
it does happen
yes,
in sports, yes.
But it seems it's been addressed more there. Am I off in that perception, or how do we improve that culture? I know that's a big question. I don't know. There's probably not a simple answer, but I want your thoughts.
There's not, but I do think that is probably site specific. So again, our program, that's not an issue at all, but you go across the street to some other, well-regarded, well-respected programs, and the culture for vocal health is different. And so when students are having issues and they're having voice fatigue, they don't feel as comfortable going to their teacher saying, I'm having fatigue, or I'm getting hoarse at the end of the week, because it's a little bit more taboo.
Right.
But in a perfect world, the culture would be, we're talking about it the minute you walk through the door as a freshman, it's being pounded into your head, vocal health, and that we are here to advocate for you and collaborate with your teacher, your faculty, the director of the opera, whatever it is, to help guide you through this so that you don't feel like you're alone, suffering silently with a voice problem that could become a bigger problem.
Because there is a stigmatism that goes with it that still exists, right? And
and it is slowly changing in the contemporary world. It's changing, I think, more quickly than in the classical world.
Right.
So when I see professional opera singers, they are definitely more private about their vocal journey. They don't want their management to know. They don't want their agents to know. Luckily, with celebrities, John Mayer, Adele, coming forward with their own vocal issues and their vocal journey puts it on the table as something that happens, and it can happen to anybody, and it really doesn't have anything to do with whether or not somebody is a great singer, a good technical singer. As I was just saying in the master class earlier, a lot of the phonotrauma and vocal injury stuff does not happen on the stage.
right.
It's happening off the stage. It's happening in social life. It's happening by rehearsing and then going to a large social event and using your voice a lot, or practicing a song 10 times in the practice room, or or at a party, or at a sporting game, a football game. That's where phonotrauma frequently happens. It's kind of not so much when you're on the stage.
I'm noticing, just even in recent, like the past couple years, that more people in the classical world are sharing.
Yes, and it's great.
And it's really great, because then it doesn't suddenly feel like someone has the scarlet letter. It's like, it's all over, right? There's still possibility. Okay, I want to talk about some terminology in case at home you're like, what are they talking about? So what is a vocal athlete?
Okay, so the athlete term, this was something that we were talking about yesterday. Those of us who are singers and use our voices professionally, regardless of the style, we are using our instrument at a level that is above and beyond what a data entry person is doing with their voice. So simply because of the mileage, the extra mileage that we're putting on our vocal folds, and the higher volumes and the sustained tones and the different styles of music, we are at higher risk for sustaining a vocal injury. Nobody ever gets surprised when a quarterback gets hurt. That never surprises anybody. So we should not be that surprised when a singer sustains a vocal injury, because it can happen. And if it hasn't happened,
because the thing is, like with the voice, yes, I'm using it as my profession, but I'm also using it when I go to the grocery store to talk to the person checking me out, and I use it when I call my Aunt Ethel. Whereas that quarterback is not just walking around in life like, catch or throw to me, right? Sorry.
And so that is the challenge of rehab.
Yeah.
Because we are like the race car where we're trying to change the tire while the car is still moving.
Yes.
So it's not like if I had a shoulder surgery and you were my physical therapist, you would say you cannot pick up anything heavier than a gallon of milk. You cannot go above 90 degrees, and you have to do this exercise and this exercise at this weight, 10 reps for 4 weeks. And pain will limit me and keep me compliant with those rules.
And people see you.
Right.
in the sling.
But with voice, you don't have that. And voice often doesn't tell you until after the fact that it's not happy with what you did. So sometimes it's the next day, right? And we can't see the voice problem, as you just pointed out. So when we're doing rehab, yes, I'm trying to help work with a patient to rehabilitate an injury, but they're still teaching in a classroom 7 hours a day. We don't put patients on vocal rest anymore. That's not a thing anymore. There are very few scenarios. There are scenarios where we do that, but very few. So I'm trying to rehabilitate when they are kind of reinforcing all day with just their general talking what we're trying to untrain and undo. So it's
really
tricky.
difficult.
It makes it tricky. Yeah.
Really difficult. Do you find, I mean, what is your main client base in Michigan?
Teachers.
Teachers. Music teachers, non-music teachers?
Both.
Both.
Teachers make up the bulk of my caseload, and certainly a large portion of them are music educators. And then obviously I'm a singing voice specialist, so I work with quite a bit of singers, but teachers are the bulk of my caseload. And so, they're teaching constantly for 7 hours a day. If they're a music educator, then they've got their own rehearsals and things that they're doing, and they probably have a family, and they have people that they want to be speaking to that are not at their job. So it's a lot. It's a large voice demand. It's a heavy load. It's a lot of vocal mileage. And the other issue is if it's a situation where the laryngologist is recommending surgical management, oftentimes they can't just take 6 weeks off.
No.
So they're either having to wait until the big winter break in December and keep their fingers crossed that they can have a surgery, right at the beginning of that holiday, and then go back to work, maybe take 1 week off and keep their fingers crossed, or they have to suffer through and wait until summer.
Wow.
So it's very tricky for teachers, and the demands on teachers continue to get more and more difficult each year, just in general.
I mean, most don't have very much downtime or any downtime. It's crazy. It's crazy. So say someone is feeling the voice is a little tired. What's sort of a go-to exercise that even someone at home could maybe try to help recalibrate?
One of the easiest exercises that doesn't require a prop is just a lip trill.
Okay.
So just doing a light, and if you're one of those whose lips don't vibrate, you can kind of hold your cheeks up. So that's a nice exercise. We call that a semi-occluded vocal tract exercise, and it's just a nice way to get a gentle stretch.
All right,
of the
so
vocal
I'm
folds.
curious if Linda Hall in West Virginia, did you just try that lip trill? I'm calling you out. Let's all try it again, the lip trill. We singers do lip trills all the time, but I don't know if the average person does, but it can be
Probably
a great
not.
thing. Again, I don't know why I'm thinking about the grocery store, but as you're in the grocery store, why not? Yep, that is great. Do we have to think about the amount of range, or is it okay to go as high or low as we want? And I'm being told, what about the microphone? Probably from the blouse. Yes, awesome.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, is that better?
Awesome.
Okay.
Are we trying to keep sort of
A certain range.
A certain range?
So
or
with any exercise, I always say just start in a comfortable range, start in a zone that's sort of an easy and accessible zone, and then stretch both up and down from there. So for you, if you're a soprano, you're going to want to start kind of in a speaking range zone, but then you will probably want to extend up and go a little bit higher and then come down, but it doesn't have to be a loud volume. It should be just nice and easy, and it should feel very comfortable in your throat.
Perfect. How long should someone do that for?
A couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, 20 seconds here. I mean, you could think of it as like a reset,
Yeah.
like a vocal reset.
I love that. And that's something that could be easily incorporated into one's day, right? All right, here's a big question that I have. How many patients do you see where stress has led to the vocal trauma?
So that's a great question. It's not an easy question to answer because there are a lot of complexities that are involved in that question. What I will say is that stress manifests itself in a lot of different ways in our bodies. So some people get migraine headaches, some people get back pain. For some people, stress and anxiety and traumatic events go right into the throat. So these muscles are actually very sensitive to stress and anxiety. When you think of the terms, I'm choked up, or I have a knot in my throat, those terms exist for a reason. And so a lot of times when I'm seeing a patient who has a muscle tension dysphonia, and maybe not even a lesion or pathology, they just have pain and fatigue with voice use, there are times when that could be associated with stress, anxiety, psychological trauma, things that are outside of my scope of practice, and I don't hesitate to refer patients out when that is an issue. On the other side, a patient has a diagnosis of a voice disorder, and then that triggers an enormous amount of stress and anxiety. And so a lot of what we end up doing in clinic, those of us who work with professional voice users and singers in particular, is just handling a lot of that issue and the psychology surrounding being a singer, identifying as a singer, and having a vocal injury. And sort of working with that. So that's actually a large part of successful rehabilitation, is understanding that nuance, understanding how to help work with a patient, staying within my scope of practice because I'm not a licensed therapist. So it's a big issue. And the last 3 years with COVID, with the extra stress with teachers, teaching with masks, teaching with Zoom, the extra strain from that, the extra stress, I mean, we've seen definitely an influx of patients because of that and the stress added to it.
I love something that you just said, and people who are great at something, I believe, know their parameters and know their lane. And I just gained even more respect for you. The fact that Marcy was talking about, this is what I'm expert in, this is what I'm not expert in. And I think that's something that's hard for voice teachers at times, because with that one-on-one contact, sometimes the student really, from a genuine place, wants or needs that voice teacher to serve other purposes, and then oftentimes the teacher, good intention, but I'm going to think of your statement in the future, and I think we could all take that to heart, that we're just staying in the lane that we're supposed to be in and tapping into the resources to supplement. And I'm going to share something personal. For me, when I'm stressed, you know, shoulders tight, goes to the voice, I find me singing, vocalizing, reduces my stress. But it took me a while to realize that, right? Sometimes I didn't realize the stress and that, just go in the practice room, do, and it's like, this is going nowhere. But then treating the voice as one's therapy for the stress, suddenly then it opens this beautiful gateway for other music making. Does that make sense? Okay.
Well, that's why I use singing as a therapy modality. So I don't just use singing in my clinical setting to work with singers. I use singing in my clinical setting to work with many of my patients, because often singing is the path of least resistance. And so we end up doing that. Now, on the other side, so you're lucky that singing, your nervous system associates singing with release and stress release.
Once I had the aha moment of,
but some people have the opposite trigger, and I see that a lot in my clinic, and so a lot of what we do is rewire that habit, right? So they've got a lot of cortical real estate that is neurons that fire together, wire together. So there's a lot of real estate dedicated to, when I'm on stage in public, things get tight and I get tight, and then they reinforce that narrative, and that narrative becomes a very fixed narrative. And so then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is they're essentially telling themselves that this is what's going to happen, so then it happens. So we spend a lot of time unlearning that and shrinking this cortical real estate and growing this cortical real estate that is associating
That's great.
efficiency and relaxation with sound production and singing.
That's fantastic.
It's tricky though.
All right, I have another question. How important do you think it is for the voice teacher to take into consideration the colloquialism of the student that they're working with? And again, I'm going to give a personal specific example. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pittsburghese, very guttural, lots of glottals. Come to the South, totally different dialect. Like Pittsburghese doesn't lend itself naturally to healthy singing and speech. No disrespect to my Yinzers. But coming to the South, y'all, and so many vowels, it's very melodic and beautiful. Do you ever think about that?
I always look at a patient's communication habits. So dialect is sort of actually a small aspect of it. But if where they're from culturally lends itself to more glottal attacks, and I think that that's problematic in their speech, then we certainly will work on that. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I notice, though, is what is the cultural dynamic in their family.
Yes.
So if they're raised in a family with 5 or 6 other siblings and the only way you were heard is if you were loud, yeah. And they're coming in and they're talking to me and this is their volume and they think this is the normal volume for the small room we're in, yeah. Then I might say, do you come from a loud family? And then the opposite also, somebody that's very soft and it's sort of more deflated voice. Right. It's not really kind of grounded. Mm-hmm. They may come from a template of where, I was trained to not be a loudmouth. It was rude to be loud. And so then their calibration for volume is also off. Interesting. So it is, yeah. It
has to be exciting how each person is just completely different.
So I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have to say I continue to learn from my patients. I continue to be astonished by some of the things that I see in clinic, even though I see them all of the time.
Right.
And I continue to marvel at just the human instrument of the voice. It really is, it's just a miraculous thing that we all have. And for those of us who've chosen to use it, to perform, to reach out, to communicate, I mean, just the capabilities are just, it's just unbelievable. And so I'm one of those people who daily sort of takes a moment and says, I cannot believe the job I have and how lucky I am to have this job. It's so gratifying to be able to work with patients and help them get their voice back, help them communicate again, help them be able to read to their granddaughter, help them be able to just sing in church if that's what they want to do, sing in the shower, sing on the Metropolitan Opera stage, whatever it is, it's all equally important.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, speaking of voices and varying people, I think we should go to our game. What do y'all think? Should we go to game? All right. Vocal identity, we will have Marcy going head-to-head with Benton. Everyone give a welcome to Benton Donahue.
Thank you.
So, well, we want all of you to be participatory in this experience. What's going to happen? We are going to play, we are going to play an excerpt of a famous person talking, And we're going to see which one of you can guess the quickest who this person is. So simply raise your hand, and then I'll call on you. You guys be thinking, because they may need to phone a friend. And at home, put it in the chat if you think you know who the person is. We have 10 voices to identify and maybe analyze a little bit if Marcy's willing.
How many phone a friends do we get?
There's no limit.
Okay, good.
There's no limit.
Perfect.
There's no limit.
Excellent.
And you guys could decide to go into cahoots. I don't know.
Gonna-
But be vicious.
Okay.
All right. All right. So first up.
Yeah, like we was in Vegas. It was my first time in Vegas, and obviously it's boiling there, and all that people just go there to drink. Basically, it's like going to Magaluf or something like that. And this woman during one of my shows.
All right. Who is it, Benton?
It's Adele.
It is! Woohoo! All right. Can you hear me okay? All right. We're going to go to the second one. Very nice,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Benton.
Thank you.
All right. Next up.
Getting ready for today's show that I can't wait to share with you, because I'm holding right now a picture that brings me such joy that I want to share it with all of you. Normally I have it on the counter there.
Who's got it?
Who is it?
Is it Michelle Obama?
No. One sec. We'll give you another chance. It's okay. It's okay. Let's give Marcy a chance.
Okay, I'm so
Just
sorry.
looking at it makes me smile.
Let me go back just a tad.
Normally I have it on the counter there because just looking at it makes me smile.
Any idea? This one's a little tricky because she's definitely not at her vocal best.
Is
Help
this
out.
the? Oh.
Oprah?
It's so funny. I actually thought that for a second, but I
picked
the
this on
dysphonia
purpose.
threw me off.
Yes. So okay. So let's listen again, and I want you
Yeah.
to share like your mini analysis of this. I'm assuming this was like super early in the morning, but I picked it on purpose. Okay, we're gonna listen one more time.
My hair, getting ready for today's show that I can't wait to share with you, because I'm holding right now a picture that brings me such joy that I want to share it with all of you. Normally I have it on the counter there because just looking at it makes me smile.
So it's funny because when you played it, my immediate response was Oprah because of the speech pattern and her vowel shapes. But then I immediately dismissed it because of the voice is actually pitched a little bit higher than her normal voice is, and so that, in addition to the dysphonia that she's clearly sick, totally threw me off.
So if Oprah was right there, what would you advise her to do, Ms. Winfrey?
Oprah.
What would you tell her?
So if she were in my clinic, we would be doing straw phonation. We would be doing straw in the water bumbles.
Could we do some straw in the water?
Sure.
Okay,
We'd be
so
doing lip trills.
Run and find a straw.
You get a straw,
in
and
your
you get a
house.
straw.
You get a straw. So let's try this.
That was
And a little
good. That was
glass
good.
of water. I have a Sonic straw, a Chick-fil-A straw, and compostable straws from the CVS. So any straw will do. Which straw would you like?
I'll take compostable.
Perfect. You want to try this, Benton?
Why not?
When in Rome, right?
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to just, if you guys want to
we're
take
using this
some, feel
water, I
free.
need
If
to sit it
not,
down.
no worries. So I have my straw. This is so cool, y'all. Oprah, be brave. Okay,
Oprah, call me.
seriously.
I'll help you.
Seriously. Okay,
Okay, number one, let me just make a comment about the amount of water.
Please.
So you and I both have way too much water in our cup. It actually should only be about 3 inches. So.
it is
That's
water.
better.
It is water.
Okay, so start we're Oprah. Are you Oprah in the
I'm
scenario?
Oprah.
Okay.
Oh my God. I'm Oprah. Okay.
Start in your comfortable speaking range.
All right.
Go ahead and put the straw in and just do some gentle pitch glides. So now do it a little bit lower and add a little volume. Let's see what happens. Okay. How did it feel when you did it lower compared to higher?
Open.
Okay, right. So, and singers almost always default to higher pitches initially, especially sopranos, and I am also a soprano. So, But getting you down into more of your actual just comfortable speaking range is where you're going to find the more open space. And Oprah has a low speaking voice. So
Yes.
for her, because you were Oprah
I
in this
am
scenario,
Oprah.
I would actually have her, just find her normal speaking range and then yeah, just some gentle lip bubbles. Maybe alternate them with some light high lip trills. I'd be talking to her about nebulizing.
I swear by this.
Do you?
I love it.
How often do you do it?
I wish I did it every day because not teaching voice, not singing as much. I need to make this part of just my regime. Back to the stress comment. But when singing, it's part of my thing.
Yeah.
I love it.
So just have a cup of water on your desk with a straw in it that's not for drinking.
It's a good
So
idea.
that when you look at it, you just say, oh, yeah, and then you can think of me.
Whenever you come to have a meeting, remind me, like, Polish, where's your water and your straw?
Easy.
Where it is. All right. Oprah, no charge. No charge for that advice. Just free coming to you from the University of Mississippi. All right. Next up.
I'm bombing.
You were, no. Okay.
I grew up in Mississippi. In my neighborhood, everyone was black.
Marcy.
The dude from Shawshank Redemption.
Got
Morgan
it.
Freeman. Yes!
Very
Morgan
good.
Freeman.
Very
Okay.
good. Very good. Very good. So,
I love him. Such a distinctive voice.
Such a distinct voice. And
Yeah.
again, for me, it's the tone that is just so pure
Right.
and beautiful, right?
But here's the interesting thing about voice. Though all of that is happening from the vocal tract, not the vocal folds. So if you cut off, this is macabre, if you cut off all of our heads and put a microphone right on top of our larynx and recorded the sounds our vocal folds were making when vibrating, this is what we would sound like. That's what you sound like. I'm really very serious. So it's actually the vocal tract and the vowel shaping and all of that that gives the vocal identity, the footprint, the voice print, which is why I initially thought Oprah and then talked myself out of it because of the quality of the voice.
Totally, totally. Okay, very good, Marcy. She's giving you a run now, Bento.
Got one at least.
All right.
Welcome to my new boutique, where each and every boat you need.
Go for it, Benton.
Minnie Mouse.
It is. It's Minnie Mouse. It's Minnie Mouse. Did you all hear it?
Not in a
Yes?
million years would I have gotten it.
Couldn't hear it all? Okay. Very nice. Moving on to number 5. Number
She
5.
reminded me very much of my grandmother.
Oh, yes.
Which
Wait.
surprised me, not
Yeah,
just in
that's Obama.
appearance, but also.
It is Obama. Very nice. Very nice. They're getting
Missed him.
competitive. Getting competitive. All right. Next up, number 6.
No. I was a big believer in New Year's resolutions, but during the lockdown, I decided to clean my office, and I found this document, and I thought,
Can we phone a
this is
friend?
really cool. It's New Year's resolutions from 2008, about 25, 26 beautifully handwritten resolutions, and I read.
I think we need to phone a friend. Or you're the friend we're phoning.
It is Kate Blanchett.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Very nice. We'll take it as a draw.
That's great. I would not have
Very
gotten
nice.
That was really good.
Very nice. Okay. I predict you're both
That's
gonna know.
impressive.
I predict you're both going to know this next one. Okay.
I do want to say something to you. I brought
Oh,
you a gift. Oh. Because
Kristen
Kristen
Chenoweth.
Chenoweth.
Kristen
Yeah.
Chenoweth.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
good. What's the score? 3-2. Oh, it's that close. Oh my gosh. All right. We only have 3 more. All right. Next up.
Aware of in the real world. And I want to say that that's when I have my mother's voice coming to me saying, Partners in Health, shoot some money to Partners in Health, put the dress on, put on a smile, and be damn grateful that you have the dollars to help. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day.
We're
And
gonna
I
phone
am really grateful.
All right.
Phoning a friend.
Meryl
Oh, it
Streep.
is Meryl Streep.
Yes,
It sounded so familiar.
Excellente.
Oh,
So wait,
That's
it's
good.
3 to 2 to 2. The audience
Oh.
is 2.
no.
Yes. All right. I love this next one.
Okay.
I might let it play a little longer just because I enjoy it. You'll probably guess it quick, but I love it.
And he sells clarinets to the kids in the town with the big trombones and the rat-a-tat drums and the big brass bass, and the piccolo uniforms too with a shiny gold braid on the coat and a big red stripe on it. Hey, I don't know much about bands, but I do know you can.
Yes?
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Did y'all get that? All right.
So good.
Last one.
We are tied now.
Could tie it,
We are.
or you bring it home. Okay. You ready? You sure? Okay, here we go. This one's a little harder, I think.
Also a very human story.
Yes.
These women get to be humanized.
Yeah.
You, I'm sure, were moved by a lot of the scenes. But also, it's just my magnum opus.
Oh.
That's who I think.
Okay,
might actually be
you were
right.
up first.
Okay,
I
think
think
he has
it's
a better
Whoopi
answer.
Goldberg.
It is not
Oh.
Whoopi Goldberg.
So is it Oprah's best friend, Gail?
It is not Gail.
Oh.
Okay, wait, listen, one more moment, and then we're going to call
My
on
friend
you.
knows them.
It's because I'm always trying to satisfy the little 6-year-old girl from Central Falls, Rhode Island, who was running from those boys. You know, and, you know, her feet stopped moving, but she kept running. And this is my gift to her because my mind is...
This is a recent interview, a movie that's coming out. Go for it. It's Viola Davis. Viola Davis.
He's phenomenal.
So, another, you are. That's incredible. So,
Well done.
what do you hear with that voice?
In terms of the quality of her
yes.
voice, it's a little rough. It's not a super smooth voice, but I think that's unlike Oprah. That's fairly typical for Viola Davis. And
That's what I
so-
was hoping you were going to
And
say.
so because it's typical for her and it clearly doesn't, it's not problematic for her and it's part of her sound, I would not consider that to be a pathologic voice. When Oprah, I would consider that to be a pathologic voice because I know what Oprah's normal voice sounds like. So remember, there are a lot of singers and famous people who have pathology or a scratchy voice or raspy voice, and it's partly what makes them famous.
I think that's really important to drill that fact home because, again, maybe it was just my circles of where I was geographically, but there was this concept of healthy voice sort of embodying a certain very prescriptive mold where I love how you just said certain people that their natural speaking voice may have a different quality to it, but if that's their baseline,
Right.
right?
And I would argue singers as well.
Yes.
So a lot of contemporary singers have sound in their voice, have a sound, have an edge, have noise, and it's what makes them unique. It's what makes them, it's actually why they're famous. So if you're the voice teacher of that artist and they're coming to you, it doesn't matter what our aesthetic is. They're hiring us. So what is your goal and what do you want to sound like? Do you like that noise in your voice? Do you like that edge? And if the answer is yes and they want to keep it, then it's our job to teach them to sing efficiently as possible within that context. When Adele had her surgery and had her polyp removed and then sang shortly after that at the Grammys, I think, you know, it was a very clean sound. It was a little like, you know, it sort of was bland because it wasn't Adele. It didn't have that smoky
wasn't her brand
quality.
Yeah.
So the challenge with her is how do I maintain my sound without constantly being injured.
Well, that was what was fun putting this group together to listen to because each, you know, example is so distinct, right? Well, you killed it, Benton. Congratulations. Whoop it up for Benton.
Thank you.
And before we say thank you, is there anything you want to ask, Marcy?
I wrote it down on one of the pieces of papers, but it goes back to your, you're talking about like what the performer builds inside of their head, and so much as it goes to be stage fright, you know, and like what would you do, I guess, from a performer standpoint to destroy that stigma, you know, to where you can get on stage and not be so nervous, you know, it just happens.
So it's such a great question because we all struggle with it. Here's the great thing about nervousness and adrenaline. It's like gasoline. It eventually runs out. So one strategy when you're backstage waiting to go on is just lean into it, let it run its course, do some grounding exercises. We did some of those earlier, and breathing, and then just go out and do it. The talk, the self-talk, the narrative is important also. But the adrenaline eventually dissipates. There's not an endless supply of adrenaline. So I would say when that starts, you say to yourself, yep, bring it on, lean into it, breathe into it, have that positive narrative. And really, it's providing as many performance opportunities for yourself as you can so that you can practice that narrative.
For sure.
And reinforce it. And then you go outside and you have a positive, you perform, you have a positive experience, and that reinforces that you can handle yourself singing even if you're nervous, kind of thing. So.
Love that.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that answer.
Thank
thank you, Benton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, another question from the house, and this ties to something I'm hoping I can get to. How do you know when your voice is overused and when to stop singing? Also, when you get to that point, what suggestions do you have for rehabilitation and recovery? And I want to insert here, to make this even more complex, how do you know how do you handle it when you're sick?
Yeah.
So I realize that's another facet.
Okay, that's like 5 questions.
I know.
In one question.
I know.
But
and we only have how many minutes?
what I would say is one of the things that I think is lacking in a lot of undergraduate performance-based majors is vocal health education and teaching. So we talked earlier about the teachers and them learning in their pedagogy coursework about vocal health and vocal health related issues, but also teaching young singers and young students to be consumers of their own voice so that they are not always reliant on an external source to tell them what they should do. And so teaching a young singer to identify red flags when they're small red flags instead of when they're big, large red flags that are hitting you over the head, that land you in my clinic.
Because the thing is, they're only with the voice teacher typically once a week.
Right.
They're their teacher the other 6 days.
That's right, right. And so voice fatigue is not normal. So if you are starting to have voice fatigue and it's new and you're not sure why, then you have to take a step back and ask yourself, okay, is there a new voice demand on me? Was I just cast in the musical and I'm using my voice a lot more? And so is this just a stamina thing that I have to build up some stamina? And that might be the answer. So then you have to track, is this improving relatively quickly as I'm getting used to this? Or no, is it becoming problematic and I'm starting to notice difficulty in my lessons, it's making my voice feel a little scratchy. So those are red flags. You want to be proactive and not reactive. So that is what singers need to learn when they're young, is to be proactive. So I would be much happier if you didn't come into my clinic because you waited until the week before your recital to finally come in and get help because you're having issues and you can't, hit the notes you need to hit and that kind of stuff. So that's the first thing, is your body will tell you if it's not happy with what you're doing. Your vocal folds will sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, but eventually it's going to start whispering. And if you listen to it and you know your instrument really well and you pay attention to how your voice is responding in various different settings, you know your instrument, so you know when it's off. And then in terms of what to do for the rehab, well, I mean, we do all sorts of things in rehab. It's always patient specific, but it's almost always going to involve the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, the vocal pacing, which is like how to figure out how to structure your day if you have your voice lesson and also opera rehearsal and choir, and you have to sing in studio rep class. So we talked about this yesterday, kind of planning ahead what your vocal week is, and that might not be the day to also meet friends for dinner and be using your voice socially. So that kind of thing. But it's being being a smart consumer of your own voice, learning to be proactive
I love
and
that
trust
proactive
your gut.
opposed to reactive. I love
Yeah,
that.
proactive instead of reactive. Singers, you know, the wait to fail model of like I'm waiting until I'm so far gone that now I'm finally getting help, that's what we need to get away from.
Completely, and it requires a bit of vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? To
Right.
be willing to say, wait a minute, something is not right.
Right.
So you're going to have an article coming out in the Nats Journal, correct?
Yes.
About how to decide whether I sing when I'm sick or not.
Right.
Are there any key points from that you'd want to share
Sure.
with us?
So, yeah, it comes out in the November issue, and it's titled To Sing or Not to Sing, Managing Performance Demands in the Setting of Illness, I think. And so basically, it's, you know, you have an upper respiratory tract infection, and you are sick, and you have an upcoming vocal engagement that you are trying to determine whether or not it is safe to do, whether you should do it, whether you should cancel it, and what is the decision making, what is the thought process, what is the thinking behind helping to guide those decisions. And for the voice teachers, it's the students are looking at you to help them determine whether or not they should do their audition. And so the article kind of outlines a couple of things. One of them is understanding, kind of trying to figure out, well, where am I on the trajectory of this illness, right? So if a cold kind of lasts 14 days in terms of like really not having any symptoms at all, where are you in that? And is your voice, are you still kind of declining with your voice functioning? Are you plateaued where you're kind of in the, we're not getting worse with the illness, but we're not quite getting better yet? Or am I on the upswing where I'm actually starting to notice improvements every day? And so sort of, you know, the extremes are kind of easy. Like if you're still getting worse, then you need to cancel whatever that gig is, and you know, unless it is absolutely, you know, going to put bread on your table and you don't have a choice and you're absolutely obligated. If you're a student, that's never an issue. So that's an easy one. If your voice is starting to get better, you have to kind of know how your body responds typically when you have an upper respiratory tract infection. We all usually get about one a year, right? And don't you typically know how a cold behaves in your body?
Yes, I think that it's important though to take the moment to journal it.
Right.
When the stakes aren't high.
Right.
Because I always find you think you're going to recall every detail and nuance, but you don't, and especially then when it's in the moment where you have to make this what feels like life and death decision. I found it really helpful to look back. Oh yeah, October of 2018, this is what happened. I don't know.
Right.
I just want to plant that seed.
No, I talk about that actually. You need to use historical data from your own body and your own previous illnesses to help you guide what you think might happen and where you think you might be, but you're not going to know that if you don't pay attention to it. And there are other things that I talk about also. And then the second part of the article sort of highlights, okay, let's say you've decided you actually are going to do the event, the audition, the recital, whatever it is. What are certain things you can do to maximize your efficiency? And then what should you do after that event to help recover from that event and kind of baby your voice a little bit. So it's an article that's sort of common sense kind of strategies, because there's no formal protocol for it.
No.
Even among laryngologists, there's not, you know, a laryngologist is going to go in, do a laryngeal exam, and based on what they see, they're going to make their best educated guess about what they think you should do. But they don't, if they don't know you and they don't know what a normal laryngeal exam looks like for you, then they're only also making, it's going to be a very good guess, but it is an estimate based on what they're seeing.
The practice of medicine.
Right, that's the craft. That's where the craft comes in.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We could talk about so much more. I cannot believe we're about to have to wrap things up, but I want to give a couple plugs. First off, I want to show this book. And say again, you're going to have another edition coming out.
The third, yep. So it should be spring of 2024.
Spring of 2024, third edition.
With several new chapters.
Exciting, exciting. And if you have questions for Marcy, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
You can email me at vocalathlete@gmail.com.
All right. And your website is?
Marci-Rosenberg.com.
Yes. Visit it. There is so much information, and there are so many questions. We're going to just have to have you back and do
I would love
part
to
two.
come
What do
back.
y'all think? Part two? Part two? Part two?
I would be happy
All right,
to.
before we say goodbye, I need to thank some people. I want to thank all of our LMR supporters and partners, our loyal viewers via the web, the College of Liberal Arts, Department of Music, and our giving group, the Secret Salon Society. If you'd like to join, please reach out to Brady Bramlett or me. I want to thank the people who make up LMR. We actually don't have Brady here tonight. He's off somewhere, and we have Jovania Coleman and Jordan Presley just running the show. They're like a boss. So give it up for Jovania and Jordan. I also want to thank Olivia and Trace for working this event, doing a great job. And I want to give a little plug, too, about LMR. We have 2 more events coming up. I shouldn't say events. We have multiple events, but 2 more residencies happening this semester. And they are both in partnership with the Sarah Isom Center here on campus and part of Sarah Fest. Mark your calendars, October 3rd for the next LMR Live. It will be an interview with mezzo Alison Light, composer Price Walden, and artist Christy Kristinek. And they will be talking about collaboration, and they're here to perform a reinvented song cycle called Hours, that while Alison and Price are making music, Christy is painting panels, and every performance results in a new visual art masterpiece. So it's going to be very exciting. And then we are going to be hosting Valerie George on our campus. We are going to have a cohort of students who want to really dive into the art of practice, the art of collaboration, and we're going to be pooling visual arts and musicians and putting them together. Valerie does a lot of work with sound and art, so I'm very, very much looking forward to that. So be on the lookout for information on that. We talked about a lot, didn't we? Yes? Are your wheels spinning? They're spinning because of an amazing person sitting next to me. So as we close this out, I want to give you a very sincere, just heartfelt thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us, and to thank you for what you're doing for all singers and the vocal athlete. We give you a big, big shout out.
Oh,
thank you to
you.
Marcy.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
And until next time, the music research revolution continues.